Alright, be nice to me today. I didn't sleep and my brain is kind of gone. Let's fix the size of this slightly. That seems a little better. I'm not going to center it. We're lazy out here. It's Deli vs. Vid, game number 6,000,003,003. Deli won the first game of the match. Vid came back to win. I missed games that happened. Was it yesterday? Was it 2 days ago? Who knows? This video is coming out in like a month, so it doesn't really matter. Um, but I missed a couple games or one game, and Vid was winning in that game. Um, Vid played a starter after which Deli had a very bad hand. I don't remember now. I think he had 3 ties out of 40 possible moves. He did not play one, which is, no surprise. That's very hard to find the ties. Vid had one winning move against Deli's reply. Vid played it. And Deli made a move where Vid had 2 winning moves, as I recall, but they were both in kind of difficult to justify places. I think Deli created as much challenge as he could, and Vid did not successfully convert, which is why we're here. But this is to say, there are chances both ways in this match, and maybe that's just guaranteed by level 6. I'm sort of curious. I have my thing that does win probabilities. I've sort of been thinking like it's interesting to look at what it thinks the hand advantages are. Because sometimes it thinks, the first turn player has a slight advantage, a big advantage, a small disadvantage, etc. And I'm curious what it would say about this match because I think we've seen a bunch of games where someone just has a very difficult random to deal with. This random looks fairly plausible, though. I'm gonna actually pause for a sec and go find my phone and stuff, and then I'll be back, and we'll continue with the game, and I'll try to actually talk about it. For you, this will take no time at all. Okay, we're back. What's going on? We got a side starter with Deli not having safety in either of 3 or 9. 3-6-3-8 is a really good coverage of 7s. 4-8-4-5 also does, though, but 3-6-3-8 does so in a much, cleaner, more convincing way. And 2-8-8-5 also covers stuff. So this was what we would again call an aggressive side, though Vid also had a safe recapture in 3. He did not have a safe recapture in 9, and in fact, he has some difficulty going up. That's kind of interesting. So my instinct then is if Vid's better recaptures are in 3 than 9, there's a case that Deli should play 3, even though he'd be conceding it, if he can kind of force good things. The thing is, Vid has so much combo play against all Deli's moves in 3, or basically all. Deli can have 3 numbers facing out. He has 4s, 2 4s, 2 7s, and a 6 facing to the left. And if he were to go in 3, every single one of those numbers can be comboed. That is remarkable. You rarely see something like that. And I don't think he has combos back. Wow. That's a pretty rare occurrence. Where the 2-8-8-5 can plus wall 4s, the 4-8-4-5 can plus wall 6s, the 3-6-3-8 can plus wall 7s. So yeah, it's pretty tough to make moves there work. I'm sure there are moves in 3 and 9 that hold, but tough to make it work. So it makes sense Deli went elsewhere. Now, Vid has that up weakness. But 7-4-7-5 kind of sweeps sufficiently. Maybe Deli didn't have a way to play against that. So he goes 7, saying, here is a card I can mostly recapture, though he doesn't really have a great recapture in 4. Well, maybe he does. 7-2-8-4 and 4 can be comboed by 2-8-8-5 and 1, but there is a combo back with 2-8-6-4 and 2. But now Vid has a chance to sort of do whatever he wants in the position. The thing is, actually, I kind of like this move Deli made. Because I think in general, when the opponent has a card that punishes everything you do, but it's all a different card, sometimes they're overworked. Whatever card comes out of Vid's hand, he's making a concession. If 4-8-4-5 comes out, he doesn't cover 6s. If 2-8-8-5 comes out, he doesn't cover 4s. If 3-6-3-8 comes out, he doesn't cover 7s. If 7-4-7-5 comes out, he's lost his big up down. Now, not all of those are going to be relevant because I was just thinking we're trying to go three, which of those moves block three and why. That doesn't mean they're that useful in other squares. But there is this interesting thing of, yeah, when Vid plays a move, it has a cost, right? He has to concede something. He takes the safety in three. I think this is wise. And now it is, of course, Deli's move. All right, so I should say my first instinct in these positions is to go 8. Something like 7, 2, 8, 4, and 8 looks fairly logical to me, but I don't think it's a very good move. The idea is, of course, if they go 9, you go 5, and you're up 6, 4. But I worry you're just swept at the end. That, for instance, they play. Well, maybe it holds, but they play some double capture in 4, they're up 6, 4, and they have a good side to side sweeper, and you have nothing for 2. Maybe you hold the tie, maybe you can go 1. So maybe like the main line is 7, 2, 8, 4, and 8, 7, 4, 7, 5, and 9, 7, 4, 5, 7, and 5, 2, 8, 8, 5, and 4, 3, 7, 6, 6, and 1, and 4, 8, 4, 5 fails to flip anything at the end. But if that works, it's really scary to go into. You have to check a whole bunch of stuff. That is just one line I checked. I think it could work. I like the visual of the setup. I would spend a bunch of time here thinking about it, which we are not going to do because my brain is not up for extensive calculation. I can give one variation that seems to me the most natural moves, but I will not be diving into sidelines. And sidelines are often where stuff is found. Like the main variation I check is because I think each of the moves are most likely to be critical, but most likely just means more likely than any other. It doesn't mean more likely than all the others combined. So I do think 7, 2, 8, 4, and 8 is an interesting move. The next square I would look is 9. But I'd really be more excited about 9 if they couldn't go in 8 without giving me something I liked. And one thing I note is 7, 2, 8, 4 landing in 5 could actually combo 2, 8, 8, 5, and 8. There is play against that. So if we went in 9 with, say, 7, 4, 5, 7, it might be that the only particularly good response is 4, 8, 4, 5, and 8. And then we have a pretty similar position to the other line, except we're not, instead of putting 7, 4, 5, 7, and 9, we can put whatever we want, but also that Vid has already flipped 7. I think in general that's probably a better version of it for Vid. Flipping 7 does kind of matter because it gives you a lot more freedom about what to put where. Because instead of having 2885 as your only capture in 4, you suddenly, don't have to flip 7 from 4. So I feel like 8 is better than 9. I am a renowned hater of 4. The solver finds a truly ridiculous number of moves, which means non-zero, but like very much non-zero in 1 here, but I can't imagine 1 making much sense. I think this is super dangerous. I'm probably on 7, 2, 8, 4, and 8. There's a case for 2, 8, 6, 4, and 8. If you really need, for some reason, like want to land 7, 2, 8, 4, and 5, which does set you up in 2, but gives you very little play in 4. It's hard for me to think that's the way, but it could be. Yeah, so like 2, 8, 6, 4, and 8, they stick something in 9. You play 7, 2, 8, 4, and 5. You're up 6, 4. If Vid goes in 2, he can't combo. He can make it 5-5, but if he does make it 5-5, if he takes it, he has to have used 2-8-8-5, and then 7-4-5-7. I think is safe in 4. So you don't flip anything back, but you do hold the tie. So maybe there's something there. Really dicey lines. This is one of those positions, like as a viewer, I would evaluate as I think this kind of position requires one really precise calculation to justify a move when there are a few different moves you could be tempted between. And that means it's really dangerous. It's very plausible that of the like 3 moves I've identified as making sense, like one of them ties and two of them lose. Or even if two ties and one lose, it's easy to play a loss. He goes for the 2-8-6-4 and 8 line. He wants to land 7-2-8-4 and 5, which, unlike the 7-4-5-7 line, sets him up in 2, but also unlike the 7-4-5-7. Like, oh, sorry. He's trying to get 7-2-8-4 to land in 5. The other way of playing, where you put 7-2-8-4 and 8, get 7-4-5-7 to land in 5. That one, you don't have. I mean, you have a little play in 2 because you have 3-7-6-6 and a plus wall. This one gives his cards more play, but it also could potentially give his opponent's cards more play, easier flips. I'm not sure of anything. One thing that really helps for Delhi's position here is 7-4-7-5 is not a sweeper on the left. It doesn't cover his sevens too well. Um, that's very important. Also, the card he put in 8 is not weak to 7. That's important if 2-8-8-5 ends up as a sweeper on the left. 7-4-7-5 is not going to be a good sweeper on the left because it's going to blank against those upward 7s, but 2-8-8-5 might be really scary. Like, if Vid plays, I don't know, 4-8-4-5 and 9, and Delhi goes 5, and Vid plays 7-4-7-5 and 2, I guess 3-7-6-6 just dodges combos, and 7-4-5-7 does too. No, and you have ties in 1 as well. Okay, that's not scary. Yeah, this probably holds, but I do think this position was quite dangerous and required some precision. I'm pleased that Delhi also liked the look of 8, because I wasn't finding any other squares I liked. Um, yeah. Vid doesn't have a big setup. That's pretty important. Like, he doesn't have a move in 2 that looks very appealing. If he wants to capture in 4, I don't know that he has good enough play for 5. And his better card for 5 walks into combos. Um, Now, Vid has been finding creative moves everywhere, so I should be checking 1 because that's probably where he's going to end up playing. But it doesn't look like 1 makes sense. How you find moves in 1 is you decide to check 1. You decide 1 is a square worth checking, and I rarely do such things. If you were going to go 1, you probably play 7-4-7-5 in 1. Um, that doesn't set up Delhi in 2, which is important. Not that any of the other cards do. It sets you up with both cards able to capture in 4. You can recapture it from 2. But I don't think it should be anything. I think this is just headed for a tie. I don't see anything, at least. That doesn't mean there isn't anything. As said, I am not a big genius today. So I think Delhi holds another difficult random. Delhi has gotten really tough randoms. Hmm. What should we talk about today while we avoid thinking? Perhaps the NBA, because I have a thesis. It's bad to be the better team. This is not a good thesis. But game 1 of the conference semifinals, there are 3 teams that have, for the playoffs and for much of the season, been just the clear 3 best teams in the league. Boston is coming off a historically great season where they won the championship and were top 10 all time in scoring differential, meaning how much they outscored opponents by over the season. And they won the championship. This year they were not as good, but they were still a really great team. Much to my chagrin, because I am a Bostonian, but I do not like the current team, so it frustrates me when they win because I feel like I'm wasting uh, stuff I can celebrate, that kind of vibe. So I would like them to not win until I like the team more, but they're not obliging there. So Boston is one of the big 3. Then there is Cleveland. Cleveland started the season with like some crazy number of wins in a row. They finished the season with the second best record and the best record in the East over Boston. They had a better scoring differential than Boston. They look really, really good. And then we have OKC in the West. OKC has Shea Gilgeous-Alexander, who just put up just an incredible season. He and Jokic are just so clearly the two best players in the league, and he probably actually had a slightly better season than Jokic did. Um, and I say that as a big Jokic fan. Just really tremendous season, and the team is so deep, and so it is such a high top end because he's so good, but it's also so deep. And they actually set the all-time record for scoring differential. They beat teams this year by more points than much more famous teams like the Michael Jordan Bulls, the Kareem Abdul-Jabbar Bucks, the Durant Curry Warriors, or Curry Durant, whatever order you want to stick them in. Um, and Draymond. Draymond was the third most important, under heralded, I think there. But anyhow, but they just did this unbelievable thing this season. So these three teams are big favorites, and two of them should play the finals, and in the East, two of them should play the conference finals. And in the first game, all of them lost. Boston choked a big lead against New York. Uh, Cleveland just kind of lost, it looked like, to Indiana. I didn't watch the game. And Denver came back from like down 10-15 much of the way to take it by two. And yeah, so all three of the big super favorites are now down 1-0. I think they're all still going to win, for what that's worth. But it is a kind of amusing moment. It's much more exciting when underdogs win, right? Like, if you're watching a match for the excitement, which of course, if you are a fan, he goes four. If you're a fan of a particular team, you are watching to like usually to root for your team, if they're in the game that's being played. So there's of course partisan fandom, um, and I find the less I'm paying attention to a sport, the less I'm invested, and I'm not particularly invested in any like of the major sports in the U.S. right now, or in Premier League too, which is my other sport. Um, yeah, I've fallen off tennis. I've fallen off Premier League. I've fallen off NBA. But the less you pay attention, the less kind of analytical and thoughtful, and the more sort of vibes based you get. And I just find all my opinions are just much stupider than they were 10 years ago. Uh, yeah. Sorry, my phone beeped. Um, and there it goes again. So all my takes are dumb about sports. That's okay. I have moved on from being a thoughtful sports fan into just being kind of dumb. But it means like what I really want is more chaotic matchups. I do like it when like certain favorites just run off with it if they have players I like. But a lot of times what I want is just like, ooh, I'm a casual fan. Game sevens are exciting. And if you're not a casual fan, game sevens are also very exciting. But at this point, I am certainly a casual fan. So I want one of OKC or Cleveland to win because I can't have Boston winning more championships. Um, but but it's kind of exciting for them all to be down one. Kind of exciting. My friend was asking me which of them he thought was the most likely to get upset. And no, he just asked me which of Cleveland or Boston. And I'm kind of simple. I just went with like what teams have the best scoring differentials, and Cleveland's was a little better than Boston's, and they look kind of similar, but if you include past year data, you're going to conclude Boston's better. And the Knicks are a bit better than Indiana. So I thought, okay, Boston's the more likely upset. Knicks are a little better. Celtics are maybe a little worse. That's probably a bad take. I don't know. He took the other one. Um, but now they're both down 1-0. So when I'm making no sense if you don't know what's going on, and what's going on is what happened 15 days ago. So everything I say will be laughably wrong by the time this comes out. But I was like, oh no, Cleveland lost. He's gonna be right. And then Celtics lose too. Yes. Now we can both be look like fools. Um, yeah. All right, back to the game. I imagine this is just a tie. Why? I haven't figured it out. But I was assuming you could just play a 9 here. That was my assumption. I wasn't sure exactly what card. Let's say, I don't know, 7-4-5-7. Why not? That makes it 5-5. If vid goes 5, with 7457, then we can combo it with 3766 and we're good. Nothing gets comboed back. There's no chain. Um, and if he goes 5 with 4845, then we can play 3766 and 2 again. And we have at least a tie. So we can't win in 5. If he goes in 2, I imagine we can just go 5. It's 5-5 as long as we don't flip anything and our cards suck at flipping stuff. So like we probably won't. We can't lose. So the only really scary thing, I guess, left is if Vid goes in 1. If he goes in 1 with 4845, as long as we've kept a 7 up, which we have to have kept because we have 2 7s up in our hand, we can play one of the cards with a 7 up. And if he plays 7475, then we can also play with a 7 up. So it looks to me like 9 ties. Now, Deli is maybe looking for more, probably doing a much more complete look than I have. I was talking recently about, I think, my weaknesses as a player. And I think I have 2 primary areas where people just, top level players just do better than me. And one is I don't think I save enough lost positions. I like to think I don't get lost positions very often, but when I do get lost positions, I do tend to just lose them. And I think one really useful trait is like when you get lost positions, if you don't lose that much, that's going to reduce your losses a lot. And I think that is a weakness. And then the other thing is, if I think the position is a tie, I will not put that much effort into giving my opponent a chance to lose unless something like quickly pops out at me. I will just go, okay, one of these moves are the only chances to be winning, and if none of them win, I will just pick my favorite of those. And I won't look, is there something else that is high pressure? And this was a way the win Vid got in this series was playing a move I would not have played because I would have gone, I think this is a tie, I'll just play one of the somewhat pressuring ties. And Vid instead found a much more difficult to meet move and went on to win. That was really cool. Yeah, I think serious flaws in my game. All right, Deli goes 5 because he has the plus in 2 when he wants to be fancy. Now, that does get comboed back, but I assume he has counted it. The combo back doesn't flip anything extra. It doesn't matter. Don't even know why I brought it up. Yeah, this looks like it works. That 1748 card sure is ugly. All right, it's got this sort of like, looks like a face taped on, like Handsome Jack kind of thing, but without Handsome Jack's handsomeness, you know? This is ugly Jack over here in 6. Obviously, we all know Handsome Jack is very handsome. Otherwise, like, what's the point of his name? So, I don't think Vid missed anything this game, but if I was Deli, I'd feel pretty pumped to be holding this. Now, I would guess he actually feels frustrated to be getting randoms that he's so displeased with, but maybe, I don't know. But I would feel pretty happy to have held this. Maybe that's easy to say from the outside. Maybe if I was playing, I would feel frustrated, but I would think what I should feel is this went great. But it really depends on the game. There's some games where you hold a bad random and you feel like, hell yeah. And there's some games where you hold a bad random and you're like, God, this sucks. This is so brutal. But yeah, Vid has consistently managed to find pressure. So I was talking about win probability earlier. It might be fun to chart the games this series of who it thinks was ahead and how close it thinks they were to winning. Yeah, I think that'll be fun to input. I should do that. I should maybe put in the whole tournament. It does take a while to put in, but given that my brain is going to be unable to do anything today, this might be a good day to do it. All right. So Deli can capture one thing if he goes in 2, but Vid captures one thing if he goes in 9, or Deli can capture nothing in 9, and then Vid captures nothing in 2. If I was Deli, I would play 9. This is entirely a stylistic preference. Some people like capturing in their ties. Some people don't like letting the opponent capture. I have always been team, do not let my opponent capture anything. You know, if there's a position with cards in, say, all the squares but 8 and 9, and I can go an 8 and flip a card, and then they go 9 and flip one back, and it's a tie. Or I can go a 9 and I flip nothing, but when they go an 8, they flip nothing. I'm going to go a 9. Not always, because sometimes I'll freak out and be like, can I even do addition? What if I'm just missing some random plus? I can't lose the game this way. I should just take the tie and 8. But when I'm not being nonsensical like that, I do prefer the non-capture tie. Yes, good man, Deli. Deli goes for the non-capture. A man of style. Alright, so that's a game. I assume they're going to keep going, so in 2 days for you, I will be putting out the next video of this match, and I will be equally confuzzled. That's a word. God, I'm gone. Befuddled? Confused? Somewhere in between those words. I will be equally eloquent and on the ball and sharp in the next video. In fact, I might be even more so, because this video I did do a little bit of thinking, and that might have used up all I had. Actually, before we go, I could pop open the solver on this, just see if anything was missed. I don't think it was, but I am curious how many ties Deli had on move 4. That seems like an interesting question to answer, because I think this was a very dangerous game that he handled quite elegantly and perhaps made it look not dangerous. I think that is misleading. On the other hand, one of my main strengths is overestimating danger at all times, which might sound like a weakness. Your mileage may vary. I think it has effectively been a strength, but you could certainly imagine spots where it is a weakness. It is a part of why I think I have my weaknesses, though. I think it's very connected to them. Pessimistic evaluation leads to not finding most difficult lines for the opponent when lost, and also leads to being satisfied with medium pressure ties when there are high pressure ties available. Alright, we're just putting in some moves. Deli had 4 ties after the move in 1. Was 2864 and 8 one of them? It was. How about 7284? Was he smart to avoid it? It was fine to avoid it. That was also a tie. How about 7457 and 9? I'm a lot less sure of this one. That one was also a tie. So I identified 3 moves. They were 3 of the 4 ties. The real question is, on move 4, what was the 4th tie? I'm going to guess it was some other card in 9, but I'm not sure which card I'd had to sort of guess at. I guess it maybe has to be 7284. So I'm going to guess 7284 and 9 as the 4th tie, but no, that is incorrect. I didn't feel good about it. So let's have it tell me. What's the 4th tie? The 4th tie was 7475 and 5. That's insane. No one's playing that. That's a bit-ass move. All right. We will end the video here.